Welcome to the I Am the Worst Parent Ever podcast with Nicole Merritt and Dr. Robert Zeitlin.
Hey, Robert.
Hey, Nicole.
How are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm feeling pretty good. I wanted to ask you something.
Yep.
How do you feel about sarcasm being used in the home? Do you find yourself to be a sarcastic person?
Yeah, I think I have been in the past. I think it's tricky. How about you? Is there sarcasm in your house?
So I'm not really very sarcastic, but my husband is the king of sarcasm. It's the language he speaks fluently. A while back, almost a year ago, I had written an article on the sarcastic parent and is it good to be sarcastic in front of your children? And I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I think, dads as sort of the fun parent, the jokey parent, comes in lots of different flavors. Sarcasm is the language your husband speaks really well. I think it's a way of connecting with your kids and being jokey and fun. But do you find there any drawbacks to it?
Yeah, I think using sarcasm in the home, it has to be explained appropriately, right? For kids that are old enough to understand. My daughter, she'll say, "What do you mean Daddy was being sarcastic?" And then we have to explain it.
How do you explain it, by the way?
Oh, I'm trying to think how we've explained it before. If you're running late and then I say, "Yeah, I really love being late," it's almost like you're touting the exact opposite of how you feel. So I guess I don't do a good job of defining it. I kind of give her lots of examples of it and say sarcasm can kind of be this, it can kind of be that. It's just humor in general, I guess, in our house is kind of a go-to for dealing with just the chaos and the craziness. But I think you have to take into consideration the ages of your children, their personality, how they have responded to it. If you're seeing a negative response to your sarcasm or your jokey nature, then you rein it back
Right.
with that child.
Right. And here we are talking on a podcast we titled "I Am the Worst Parent Ever," right? Which I guess you could see as sarcastic. Someone just said it's the I don't know, they called it something, I forget the word, but basically made sure that people knew that we weren't talking about the worst parent ever. We're talking about the times where we feel like the worst parent ever. But sarcasm is one of those things where it's sort of it's like negativity and sort of joking coming out sideways. And I can see where it could be confusing to kids. I get where, but it's also, like we talked about before, you want your kids to grow up seeing all aspects of what to deal with. So when they have that sarcastic teacher in middle school, they're like, "Oh, I get this. I've seen this before."
Right. I think totally. It's almost a life skill, not the fact that you have to be able to use it or that you should use it, but that you have to be able to recognize it and get yourself slightly comfortable with it. I've shared before that for children, I feel like one thing you have to raise them with is the ability to banter. I feel like dialogues can take so many shapes and forms and go in so many different directions, and that just a great life skill is to be able to recognize the different forms of banter and engage in them and know when a joke is appropriate and when it's disrespectful. And I guess us doing that in the home is a way to teach them.
That's huge. I actually have a group of friends I talk to about education all the time, and I think it was Ito in my group said, a life skill, like you said, life skill is banter. Mm-hmm. One life skill could be storytelling. How do you actually translate, an experience into a way that someone else can understand and explain? But I think banter, if sarcasm is one kind of part of banter, and banter is a part of storytelling, I have to bring up one other part, which is a really tricky territory that we all sort of tread with our kids, which is, at some point, whether it's from us or in our case, sometimes from grandparents, they experience profanity for the first time, or at school. I remember at some point our son came home from school and he's like, okay, this kid got in trouble for this word. Like, tell me all the things I'm going to get in trouble for, because I need the whole, list. So I know where I'll get in trouble.
Right. And I can't remember if I shared it with you or not, but my daughter came home one day too. And a friend, not even a friend, I guess, but a kid in her class had said out loud to her, "You said the F word." And she goes, "No, I didn't. What's the F word?" Like, she doesn't even know what the F word is. And then he started making fun of her for not knowing what the F word was. I had to, talk with her. She even asked me, what's the F word? And I said, we're not going to talk about that right now. It's a not nice word that you should be proud you don't know. It's not something that we should say. But she was embarrassed. I mean, that she didn't know. And should I arm her with the word so that she does know it? I don't know. I mean, it's you got to ride that line.
Oh, I think that's the first of many lines that you're going to ride. Should your kids experience this or experience that, or know what they're talking about in the news nowadays, or should, as teenagers, should they, if they're not choosing and you're not choosing for them to completely abstain from drinking or whatever, should they experience that before they get into a situation, So it's like, it's the first of many lines. Did telling her we're just not going to talk about it, like, did she get it, or was she still like really curious? Like, did she still feel like she was out of the loop?
She was it wasn't, we're not gonna, it was, mommy's not gonna say this word, because you don't need to have it even anywhere in your mind and vocabulary right now for it to accidentally spew out, It's not a nice word, and one day you'll figure it out, whether it's from me and we have the conversation, or you figure it out on your own, and we can talk about it then. I feel like with children, at least at the age that my kids are, any curious word they come across that's sitting just in the back of their head it's gonna spew out at some point, because they want to try it out. So the longer I can kind of keep it out of there. But I guarantee you there's people listening right now that say, no, give it to them, let them try it out, then have a conversation about it. So I do see that point of view as well. That's why I said I struggle with it. I don't have the answer.
Right.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
It's a tough one. And at different levels, different, words, the F word, obviously at her grade level, but even younger words. Like, there's a great story that a mom of a 5-year-old told me. She had her son in the back seat, but she forgot for a minute when a truck cut her off in traffic, and she yelled out in the car, "Stupid MFer," at the truck driver. And then all of a sudden she remembered her 5-year-old, and she looks in the rearview mirror and she looks back, and he is just like speechless. And she starts explaining, she goes, sometimes, mommy gets mad, and the kind of speech you've had a million times, right? And, right? And he goes, "You said a bad word." And she's like, "I understand, sometimes, mommy," because "you said stupid."
Oh, and I totally get that woman, and my thoughts are with you. You and I can be BFFs, because I am that type of person that we will read a Dr. Seuss book, and I will not say the word, gun. It says the hunter had a gun, the sheep, he did run. I won't say that. I don't use the word stupid. We don't use the word ugly. We don't use the word fat. But the other day, my dog crapped in the house, and I literally stepped in it, and I said, "Shiitake." and it happens. So I think that's when you get back to explaining to your kids that we are just like them, and we make mistakes, and that we do things we're not supposed to, and you teach them.
Yeah, it's good to make mistakes in front of them. We kept a lid on it. We kept a lid on profanity for a long time, my wife and I, and we use curse words when we talk, but in front of the kids for a long time. And then finally we let the lid off. And then of course, the younger one just ran with it. Like she was off to school teaching her friends. It's really exciting. And just started to use it around the house way too much. And then we had to scale it back. And then we eventually get the curse jar, So if any of us curse, we have to put a quarter in and $1 for certain words and $5 for the big F word, right? And at some point, we were kind of getting under control. And our kids would get the money and be able to do what they wanted with it. That wasn't their curse jar, it was the grown-ups curse jar. And at some point, our son turned to us and he goes, I really want to buy this game. Can we go over to grandma's house? Because I know I can get her to drop the F-bomb.
Poor grandma.
She didn't care. Like all you needed to do was ask her to cook something in the kitchen. At some point, she would like bang herself or cut herself or burn herself, and the F would just pop out.
Oh, does she know that she is the reason he has that game?
Oh, she still laughs. Like they reveled in it. They really didn't care. Their kids, us, worrying about that stuff was not their problem.
Right. Well, and I think, again, like I swear, everything always comes back to balance, but it is that life buffet. Real life is people cutting you off, and real life is you spilling hot coffee all over yourself, and it hurts. So you're not just going to say, ow, that it's all a part of real life, and just it's little pieces of digestion here and there, of happenings and of challenges. I don't think there's any way to completely rein it in. And for those that have, I guess we need to hear from them and find out how they do it.
I'm pretty sure when the Dalai Lama spills hot coffee on his hand, he yells shiitake.
Right? Unless you are, I don't know anybody actually. I was gonna say, I don't know anybody that would.
But it's hard in front of our kids, and we edit ourselves. But at the end of the day, like you said, the life buffet, I think they get a lot out of seeing us mess up and catch ourselves and correct ourselves. And they learn more than like my son who came home and wanted sort of the airport checklist of the things he couldn't carry on the plane. Just list it out for me. So I want to avoid ever getting yelled at or get in trouble. And it's not how life works. And I think now he looks back at being that kid and realizes that he probably learned more at those times where he did mess up and he learned something and he bounced up against it. And he learned the world wasn't going to end and he could handle it, whatever yelling or punishment he might get. And those are the life lessons we actually want our kids to learn, because, this idea of like saving them from any kind of skinned knee or whatever all the way into adulthood doesn't achieve our goal of raising a balanced, fully functional human.
Right. And I think, yeah, you run into, you raise a child who is so fearful of, certain words or certain language. And then they have a friend that says it, and then they immediately say, oh, you shouldn't have said that. That was a bad word. They may get outcasted by the friends for feeling that way. I think they have to maybe say, oh, okay, we don't use that in my home, or that's not the way I would describe that. But to kind of know when to, they don't need to be everybody else's language police, word police, because right. That's where I think you have to teach your child, you use the words you're comfortable with, and our family has decided are appropriate words that speak to our values, and somebody else's might not be the same, but that doesn't mean you go tattle on them or that you ostracize them or not play with them.
Which brings us back to sarcasm. So I went to an all-boys school, and at some point around middle school or beginning of high school, like sarcasm became the game. And everyone was being super mean to each other in these sort of cutting, like, I didn't really mean it ways. And it got to the point where actually a teacher sat us down and he's like, listen, it's getting out of hand and we have to figure out how to rein it in. And the same is true for our families, whether it was when we let the lid off the cursing box in our family, or, your kids are trying to figure out your husband's sarcasm. Like, how do you pull it back? I mean, I think this is the parenting challenge for today, right? How do you pull it back in a way that doesn't like shut it down, doesn't teach your kids the wrong lesson, but actually says, this is how we're going to do things. And this is the new family rule, or this is the new normal that we're getting to. And, you can say those words in our family because you're teenagers now, but our rule was you can't use them in anger. You can't ever throw, the F-bomb at someone in anger. You can use it in language. That's fine, in appropriate settings, but like there's times when to use it and there's times not to.
And I think you do that just by living life and being authentic, living life as you are and being authentic and being true to yourself. I never curse in front of my children unless it's, something crazy like I step in a pile of crap or, I spill a hot coffee on myself. But other than that, I censor my language and I'm careful and I watch it. But I curse when I write, I do that a lot. I'm more free with it then. I think that you have to own who you are and be your true version of yourself. And your children will benefit from that and they'll respect that. Absolutely. There's curse words in the car when people cut us off. I'm not going to admit if they're from me or they're from my husband. But when you almost cause us to crash and dare come close to hurting my children, it's not positive words that come out of our mouth. But we are able to have the conversations with our children to say, listen, we said that out of frustration. It's a not nice word that we shouldn't have said out of frustration, but it came out and it happened, but you're not allowed to say that word. And again, if you have those talks with your children and you are open and you are honest with them at an age appropriate level, then I think that's the absolute best example you could be leading for them.
Yeah. And getting back, I totally agree. And getting back to your original point there, being your authentic self is the only thing you can really be. Your kids see through all the rest of the stuff. We think we're great actors. We think we're great. We hide all the stuff behind the curtain, but the kids know where the curtain is and they peek behind the curtain, and like, you can only be true to yourself. So be honest, and be upfront. And then, like you said, be the adult and say, this is what we do. And this is what we don't do. And this is how our family works,
Right. I mean, I think our kids learning that life has a whole language of bad words and different challenges might drive those bad words out of us. But that we know if the bottom line for us is to always be kind and respectful and never mean anything with malice or ill will, that accidents will happen, profanity will happen, and just be understanding of it, whether it's from somebody else in your vicinity or it's coming out of your own mouth. Excellent.
I agree 100%. Good job.
So the next time my husband curses or is sarcastic and I get offended, I am going to tell myself that there's no need to be. It's meant in a jovial nature.
It is. And it's part of the whole thing that your kids get to experience. But if they're confused, explaining to them is important and putting it in context. But they're gonna run into someone cursing in the future. They're gonna run into someone sarcastic in the future. And we're sort of training them on how to deal with it.
Well, grandma's training them actually, right? Apparently.
Oh, yeah. She's done a great job training them.
I gotta meet her.
Sounds good.
All right.
Talk to you later.
Thank you for listening to the I Am the Worst Parent Ever podcast. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss an episode.